After several years spent working for the federal government, Amy L. Bernstein's soul was completely crushed by the lack of creativity in the work. She was working incredibly hard and feeling numb and demoralized. She realized she needed to make a significant change to her life or she was going to fall into a serious depression. Amy had to identify her wounds and learn to heal them, to be honest with herself and others. Many of you in the audience are going to relate to Amy's story.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Amy L. Bernstein is a multi-genre author, book coach, and former award-winning journalist. Her book, Wrangling the Doubt Monster, Fighting Fears, Finding Inspiration, won her first place in the self-help category at BookFest 2025. This is a little book of encouragement that every self-doubting creative person needs right now, and to help them pursue artistic dreams and a more creative life. My goodness, you're preaching to the choir, girlfriend. I hear you loud and clear.
You
And
bet.
I thank you. I thank you. I am looking forward so much to hearing what you're going to share. So tell us your story and start with the beginning of what I had shared originally about what you were going through before your life changed.
Right. Well, I think it helps for listeners to understand that I was well into my 50s before I could even call myself a writer with a straight face,
Wow.
which tells you an awful lot about self-doubt, particularly considering that I had made my living almost since leaving college in a writing profession. Whether it was in marketing, whether I was doing journalism in print or public radio, and even my years with nonprofits in the government, I was always in some kind of a deep communications role where writing was kind of my superpower and the thing that I always did best. And I could not call myself a writer because I was doing that work for everybody else, and somehow it didn't feel like mine. And you alluded to this sort of pivot point that I reached, pretty much a typical sort of midlife crisis, but I think for me, it had been brewing most of my life
Mm-hmm.
when, I basically reached that point where, and many of us wake up one day and we reach this point and just like the Peggy Lee song, is that all there is? And I knew, no, no, I've got one life to live, far as I know, and I cannot continue to live it exactly the way I have been because I'm so unfulfilled. Like I just don't feel like a full human being. And so, we can go into how I did it, but the point is that over a period of years, I really transitioned into a full-time creative writing life where I'm now touching so many other people in writing and creative professions and feeling so much more fulfilled in my own work, as well as in being able to help others kind of reach their own creative potential. So it's been a really, really, really big shift.
Where were you when I needed you?
And well, I could turn it around too, Carol, and say, where were the people that I needed to talk to when I needed them? And
Exactly,
I didn't have anybody. And I really think that one of my goals here is to normalize these conversations publicly around self-doubt because they plague all of us. And there's a lot of shame around some of these feelings because it feels like inadequacy. And we don't tend to talk about it except maybe with, our very closest, partners and friends. But it's something we should be discussing more.
Absolutely. I finally, out of pressure, is basically from friends and family and acquaintances, I did come out of the woodwork and write my first book when I was 67. And so that's why because I should have done it a lot earlier. But I know that one of the messages that you're going to share today is it's never too late.
Absolutely. And when you say should have, you did it when you were finally ready. And I think that's
Hmm
all we could
hmm
expect of ourselves.
That's right. That's a good point. So, what is the relationship between creativity and self-doubt?
It is a really complicated one. And most people doing really creative work, and by the way, that could be in an entrepreneurial space. It
Hmm
could be, wanting to open a retail store. It could be obviously in one of the arts professions. Um, it's really common for people with a creative mindset or creative outlook, meaning people who want to create something from nothing and take this sort of risk that they
Mm,
that they don't have to take, but they really want to take. There is so much doubt that comes along with this. And a lot of that doubt is springing from the kind of culture that we live in, because we
okay.
live in it, we live in a culture that rewards certain kinds of performance measures, productivity, earning power, title, power, prestige, all these things that our culture values and that we are brought up to value. When you are in a really creative endeavor, particularly in the arts and anything that you want to call an art or art form, a lot of those things do not apply. We can't put timelines on our output. We can't necessarily measure, what progress always looks like. We often there's often no monetary value to what we're doing in a creative
Mm,
space, or at least not yet, or it's not apparent. And so, and we do it, we tend to do it alone. I mean, some art forms are highly collaborative, like theater, but there's still sort of an insularity to that. And so none of this is particularly valued and supported or sustained by the culture that we live in. And so it's so natural to feel so doubtful around these activities that feel somewhat unsanctioned. So that's where a lot of that comes from.
so what should you do about that?
There are many things that you can do, and a lot of what I talk about, only a bit in the book, really, because the book is really about encouraging you to feel very seen as a self-doubting person. But there are strategies that we can implement. It's all around mindset and mindset management and shifting the way we think about ourselves and the way we operate in the world, because this there's no silver bullet here, right? It's you can't just wake up one day and make it all different and feel differently about everything. So when we talk about mindset management, we're talking about taking steps over time that help you see yourself, your work, the world around you sort of through a fresh lens, and that in turn can help you to be more productive, and committed to your craft. And I can talk about what a few of those steps are, that you
Sure,
can
go
take.
ahead.
So one of the ones that I think is so important that we tend to overlook far too often is the importance of sidelining your adversaries and surrounding yourself with allies. So, an adversary can be a person or an institution that doesn't understand or support your goals as a creative person and the risks that you are willing to take as a creative person, which includes things like failure and, no monetary gain and that kind of thing. Our adversaries, unfortunately, can often be the people who love us the most. And that's because they don't understand your creative impulses and that sort of need deep inside of you to go off and do things that to many people look foolish, risky, a waste of time. And so they're actually fearful for you. They don't want you to fail. They don't want you to, let's say, pursue what they think of as hobbies that won't satisfy you or earn you any money or win you any accolades. In other words, they don't meet any of the cultural um, measures, right? So we're often surrounded by adversaries who love us and want to protect us. But in doing so, they are discouraging us from doing the very things that we really actually want to do. And that's a really hard place to be. You want to surround yourself with allies, and an ally can be a person or an institution, like,
Mm,
say, a writing community, a writing group. I mean, again, I'm just defaulting back to writers because it's an easy example that people can understand. Um, but a community of people who get you, they see you doing this thing, practicing this art, learning a craft. They don't expect you to have a measurable outcome. They know you may not be ready to share. They
right.
understand, they understand that this is a process, and they're there to support you on that kind of that journey. So you really want to try and distance yourself from the adversaries and really surround yourself with allies. That's a really key step.
And what about those who really aspire to be a writer, but they shouldn't?
Why shouldn't they?
I don't know. I'm just wondering if sometimes some of the books that you read, you think, why was this ever put into print?
I'm of two minds about this.
Okay.
So as an artist slash humanist, I will support every individual's right to pursue any creative purpose or project that it's in their heart to pursue, period.
Mm,
And that has no bearing on its merit or its objective merit or whatever. It's because if it's in your heart to do it, do it. I mean, you might decide to take pottery classes and make the world's ugliest mug anyone has ever seen. So what? If it's brought you joy, if it's brought you peace, if it felt meditative, if it felt like, you
mm,
were proud of what you did, that's awesome. You know, the other side of that is that there are people out there who will evaluate and assess the merit of what you've made. And, you have to be willing to be a creator with regardless
hmm.
of what comes your way from that side of things. So it's kind of two different ways of looking at it, I guess.
What an excellent answer. That just kind of came to me, and I'm glad I threw it out there because there might be somebody else thinking that same thing. So thank you for that. So now, how does self-doubt hold you back from your full potential? Speak on
Yeah,
that a little bit.
in so many ways, and we don't necessarily see it. We don't think of the word doubt is it's very common in my vocabulary, but it's not that common in our kind of inner consciousness vocabulary because doubt or self-doubt can often manifest in a variety of different ways. First of all, it can it can lead you to tremendous bouts of indecision where you just feel unable to make a decision and you keep putting a decision off and you're not even sure why you're putting it off. And but the reason is that you are so fearful of making a perceived wrong choice. You're so doubting your own competence that you'd rather postpone than commit because the commitment feels scarier. So that's one way that self-doubt shows up. So related to that, because what I'm really talking about is procrastination.
Right.
It really can be a reason that procrastination shows up. It really can lead to um, shame spirals and also feelings of depression, feelings of disconnection, feelings of lack of interest and enthusiasm in things. And the reason is that your doubts are short-circuiting your joy or pleasure that you might take in doing something, and it kind of cuts off your relationship to the effort. You don't want to try something that makes you feel terrible. Um, and self-doubt is all mixed up in that, I believe.
One of the questions that someone posed more than once actually during this type of interview regarding writing is being realistic in what is going to result. In other words, if you're sitting down to write a bestseller and you never sell anything. Now, I understand what you talked earlier about the fulfillment side of it, but what about handling the discouragement if it doesn't work out the way you expected it?
Let me address that in two ways because these are incredibly distinct things. If you want to write, you've got to want to write because it's inside you to do that. That there's a story you want to tell. You love the experience of putting the words on the page. You love creating characters. You love building a world. You love living inside that world. And you love language. And you love reading. And you love books. That's why you write. You write because the way I always put it is it's my way of explaining the world to myself. And it's my way of communicating with the world. I do it best through text. And it's my way of exploring ideas that I want to share with the world. I do that through my novels. And so that's one side of the coin, and that's got to be the absolute core of your motivation. I don't believe in sitting down to write because you want to quote unquote write a bestseller or be a famous writer. That's just not a proper source of motivation. And
Hmm.
it is incredibly unrealistic because the truth is you have zero control over how your material is going to be received by others and what's going to happen to it. I
Right.
mean, there are writers out there who've written books that are not very good and they sell a lot of them anyway. And there are writers out there who write really, really good books and they hardly ever see the light of day. And you really don't control a lot of that. So I I really discourage anyone who wants to write from thinking of it from that angle. You have to write because you literally want to write.
And these are all things that you address when you coach people too, correct?
Yes, because in my book coaching practice, I'm helping authors. I'm particularly working with nonfiction authors in the book coaching space, but I'm helping them to basically visualize and structure a book and to make it seem like a really powerful, sort of inevitable thing that has to exist in the world. We try and find the urgency for that book. Why this book? Why you? Why now? Um, so in that sense, when I'm coaching nonfiction authors, I do have to have marketability in mind because they're literally working with me in order to write a book proposal to potentially get some kind of a deal. So that's folded in. But if I'm speaking mainly to anyone who's writing fiction in particular, you've got to start with your commitment and your joy in telling a story.
Well stated. I know that you covered part of this already, but what are some of the strategies that we can adopt to learn to manage those doubts and boost our self-confidence?
Yeah, I call it walking with doubt. We cannot banish self-doubt. It's always going to be there, but we can walk with it. And one of the mindset exercises that I like to encourage people to do is if you think about it, force yourself to think about your own thinking. We often allow very negative and self-critical messages to dominate our thoughts, not just during our waking hours, but I mean, if you're anything like me, I mean, often before falling asleep, I'm berating myself for all the things I thought I did wrong or didn't do or should do, or, all that kind of stuff, right? So that's there. What you've got to do is remind yourself that there's an entire other side of the ledger that you're ignoring. And that side of the ledger is the amazing things that you have already done within your life, the incredible
Mm.
risks you've already taken, the wins you've already had, the odds you've already beaten, and I call it reveling in your own competence. Remind yourself of all the things you're actually really quite good at, and other people respect you for that. And so you bring all this competence and capability to the table. And you, you we don't need to let the self-doubting side of the ledger call the shots. And that's pure mindset management. You've got to remember to temper the negative side with the positive, as we call it. Stop replaying the old tapes.
And what about making a career pivot in later in life?
Right. Particularly because doubt holds us back, right? There's all these common things we're thinking like, well, I'm too old to start over. I'm too old to try that now. I'm never, if I wanted to do that, I should have done that when I was 25. I, I have to say, with people living longer, the third act in our lives, and I'm in my third act, this third act, it goes on for quite some time. We're talking, a lot of us have a really good 30 years in that later stage of our lives. There's no reason why you can't, in some fashion, pivot to new things later in your life or at really any point in your life, assuming other things being equal, such as your health and your stamina and things of that nature. But if you have the desire, you should do it. We shouldn't worry about aging brains because you know what? Aging brains are also really patient, and we're able to have perspective on our failures. We're willing to try again if we don't succeed. And so there's a lot to be
Hmm.
said for the aging brain taking on something new. So I say go for it. And if I can add one corollary to that, it would be we don't have to step into this new creative life or whatever we're envisioning all at once. We don't have to make six radical changes all at once. We don't have
Mm.
to wake up, quit our job, sell our house, downsize, cancel cable. Like we don't have to do all these things. You can, but you don't have to. I mean, I took really small steps. I started by taking, I left the job that was just kind of doing me in. And frankly, I was willing to take a pay cut for a slightly less responsible job. And then I did another one after that. And I started ratcheting back to, as I ramped up my
Mm.
creative work, I ratcheted back the other side that was basically sort of sucking me dry. Now, I was able to do that because I had some financial stability in my household. But the point is, I did it slowly and incrementally over really several years.
Mm.
So you can do that. You can start slowly.
What are some of the ups and downs? You probably know them all, correct?
I'll never the day the day that when was this now? I'm trying to think. This must have been early in really early in the pandemic. Yes. So almost 6 years ago. I left my last regular waged job. And a couple days after I did that, I was telling somebody, that I quit my last job. And they said, "Are you crazy? Like what? I mean, why would you do that? What are you going to do now?" And that person, there's somebody, right, who was being adversarial, right? They weren't being an ally, they were being an adversary. They didn't mean they weren't trying to be mean. They were reflecting their own uncertainty on that scenario, right? It's like, I wouldn't do that. Why did you do that? The point being that it sent me into an incredible tailspin for several days where I was like, what the F did I do? No one will ever engage me to do anything else again, ever. No one will ever pay me to do anything. I just sealed my fate, my doom. And I was really worried. And then I came out of it.
Hmm.
So that was difficult.
No kidding. And here you are.
Well, and I'll tell you the other thing was difficult. I so somewhere around 2018, 19, I sat down to write my first full-length adult novel. I had written a young adult novel years earlier, but I didn't even really try to get it published. And I decided, okay, this is where I really, 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 really want to do this. This is so important to me. And I wrote that novel and I couldn't nobody wanted it. Agents didn't want it, publishers didn't want it. And I remember, I wrote another one and I had trouble selling that one. And I remember feeling horrible, like, oh, I'm actually failing at this. I'm failing totally at all of this. And I had an epiphany some point after that. I I had embarked on an extremely new and difficult craft. Writing fiction, writing novels is a very, very hard thing to do well. Very few people just sit down and bang it out of the park, right? And so I hadn't appreciated this is a new skill set. I've been always been good at all the things could do, and now I'm doing something I really haven't quite done, and I need to give myself time for a learning curve. And that helped me with the mindset. And by the way, all those books have been or will be published. So I won in the end.
We're going to take a quick, about a 50-second break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what you can do for others as a writer, as a professional book coach, and whatever else you have to offer. So we will be right back.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
You are a writer, of course, and a professional book coach. And I'm assuming you offer your services online as well. So tell us a little bit about what you can offer us in whatever area that you share.
When you're writing, it's a very lonely thing, right? It's you and the computer or whatever you're writing on. And I have to say that I take extraordinary joy and get a lot of energy from participating in creative communities and really trying to show up for them in a variety of ways. So I do run a book coaching consultancy where I have paying clients and I'm helping them find their own best path to publishing in the nonfiction spaces. And it's phenomenal to watch writers develop somewhat under my tutelage and really kind of get to the point where they can shop a book proposal. So that's a very joyful experience. I also deliver writing workshops at writers' conferences and online all over the country. And I take enormous joy in um, uh, teaching and sharing craft with other writers, both from things that I've learned and from ways that I have found to help demystify aspects of the process so that we can all share in those things. And I love doing that as well. And I find that give and take to be marvelous. I'm speaking at the San Francisco Writers Conference in a few weeks, and I'm really, really looking forward to that. Um, so those are some of the things I do. I also mentor other writers and other artists who are much earlier in their careers, and a lot of that is really just about showing up for them and listening and advising when asked, not telling people what to do, mainly because people they just want someone to hear them, right? So that's an important place to show up too.
And tell us about your books.
I can't believe that I've got 7 books. I know many people have written many more than
Oh,
that, but
wow.
for me, I don't even know how I got there. So I do have, in addition to Wrangling the Doubt Monster, which is nonfiction, very creative nonfiction, I do have 6 novels, and I do have a novel coming out this spring that I'm really quite excited about because I'm hoping that for me, a book is successful if it engenders a lot of conversation with readers. And this book is called Tent City, and it's basically about what it looks like to lose your grip on the American dream during an economic meltdown, and one family's travails in particular, as everything sort of they hoped and expected their lives to be, and playing by all the rules. The rug is very much pulled out from under them, and there's a lot of sort of danger and disaster that arises as folks pitch tents on this family's lawn and turn it into a tent city. So it's a book with some darkness to it and some hope to it, but I really love to look at the world as it might be and help us reflect on the world as it is.
Do you write mostly, like your other books, on experience or strictly a story? What's your motivation?
Every book is different. I will say, though, that as a former journalist, I tend to bring some research into all of my fiction. And I tend to gravitate, even when I'm writing, whether I'm writing a mystery thriller or even a paranormal romance, I tend to bring real world issues into it somehow. That's just what
Hmm.
I'm interested in. Um, even a book I wrote starring a mermaid or a human hybrid mermaid, even that book has some reality in it. So I I I can't seem to get away from it. But I love the way, writing stories gives you this chance to explore the world in new and different ways and kind of get out of your own skin a bit.
What kind of feedback have you had, and what are people's favorites?
I I have no idea. I mean, I have a male friend who keeps telling me my mermaid book is his favorite, which is hilarious, because it's very much the kind of thing that would be read by, I feel like, young adult women. I can't answer that about what people like. I made an interesting decision early on, which was to write whatever moved me and not feel that I had to stick to a particular genre.
Mm.
And so as a result of that, although I have 2 dystopian, not real speculative novels coming out, meaning, a look at how the world um, could be, but isn't, through a kind of a dark lens, and that's Tent City and another novel called Seed. I have written, as I alluded to, I've written a mystery thriller, I've written a paranormal romance, I have written a young adult. grounded fantasy about a mermaid who is part of an extinct species that's almost extinct. And I've written a YA novel for kind of young teens. So I've been all over the map, which is not a strategy that I recommend to other writers.
And what's in the future, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, lots more teaching, more book coaching. I don't know when I will get to another novel, as I'm going to be marketing two novels over the next year or so, as well as continuing to market Doubt Monster. So, but definitely more writing, more engaging with writers everywhere, and really trying to be a champion for creative people and creative communities.
You're really enjoying this, aren't you?
Yes, yes, I am. I'll never regret. I'll never regret making
Right,
that pivot.
right. Well, in closing, is there anything, whatever you would like to share?
Don't be afraid to take on a creative project.
Mm,
Um, because even though the cultural signals may be kind of scary and kind of cautioning you both subconsciously and consciously not to do it, not to try, or not to bother, I believe that every human being is innately creative and that it is an inherent human right to express ourselves creatively, whatever that looks like to you. So don't hesitate, go out and embrace it.
so well stated. Thank you. And thank you so much, Amy, for being on Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Thank you, Carol. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.